Join us now, Ian Shepherdson, founder and chief U.S. economist for Pantheon Macroeconomics. We lose sight sometimes, Ian, of just how important things like today's jobs report is. Things, Jay Powell is back in front and center in our minds, but it really never left us, did it? Because even this election, many times, is viewed from the viewpoint of what it means for stimulus after the election, which is amazing that, that the markets sometimes were moving not necessarily on who won the election, but on what the prospects for stimulus were, depending on, who holds Congress and who takes the executive branch. So this is important. Where are we? Do we need stimulus? Jay Powell's begging for stimulus.
He is begging. Yeah, he's begging. Every time he speaks, he begs for stimulus. And I think the reason for that is he can probably see in some of the very short-term, almost real-time data that we get now on employment, especially in the services sector, which is where the real COVID hit is most severe, that things are actually going backwards now. We won't see that in the report today, because these are October numbers, and the October numbers will probably be like 300,000-400,000 net gain in payrolls. But November, because we're almost at the November survey week, and the real-time data since the October survey has really tanked. So I think he's probably looking ahead and thinking, look, if we don't get some action here, we could be seeing a run of outright negative payroll numbers November, December, January, because as we all know, as you just highlighted earlier, the COVID cases are rising very rapidly. The hospitalizations are rising rapidly. So people are scared and they're retreating from services. They're not going out so much. And that then leads to layoffs. So we've got a really deteriorating labor market picture on top of the fact that we've only recovered half of the jobs that we lost in the spring. So, yeah, I can understand why Mr. Powell is begging for more action. OK. Now we need to delve back into the political arena to try to determine what some of these things mean. We're seeing that Georgia's turned. We don't know how it finally plays out, how long it's going to take. But what would if it was a lame duck President Trump, or even if he were to win re-election somehow still at this point, with the Senate now where we're not really sure how that's going to play out, although, it still looks perhaps like it's either a tie or Republicans take control. Then you've got the House. I don't know whether you'd say that Speaker Pelosi was repudiated necessarily, but it wasn't a great showing for the House, and that may have something to do with the stance on stimulus. Does this make it more likely that near term we could get stimulus? I think it probably does, actually, because the deterioration in the COVID picture now is so alarming. I don't want to sound like I'm scaremongering, but the number of cases is really rocketing out of control now. And hospitalizations are probably going to get back to the spring peak as soon as Thanksgiving and then just keep rising. So I think this is going to focus the minds of people in the lame duck session, and I think it'll focus the mind of Speaker Pelosi. As you said, the House election for the Democrats were really way worse than they expected, and I think that may well be because some people took the view that she was being offered stimulus. Okay, it wasn't what she wanted and she didn't like it, but she turned it down at a time when the economy, I think, really needs it, and it was becoming more clear that it needs it. So I kind of think that everyone's incentives have changed a little bit in Congress since the election. Of course, we've got to think about where we end up in January, but between now and January, the lame duck session, I think, is more incentivized to act than it was before the election. So there's still some pretty hardline fiscal spending hawks on the Republican side, but I just think that from Mitch McConnell's perspective, being seen to do nothing while the COVID situation spirals out of control is now much more risky than it was for him before the election. And I think that also applies to Speaker Pelosi as well. So I'm crossing my fingers and hoping they can get together and do something really quite substantial, because the need is becoming quite severe, I think.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.